Hi everyone, I'm Hextasy, and today we'll be doing another hardcore Nuzlocke of Pokémon Scarlet. The rules being, no items in battle, the level cap is set to the next boss's ace Pokémon, we can only catch one Pokémon per area, and if a Pokémon faints, they're dead and we can't use them anymore. And because this game has 3 separate storylines to play through, we'll be bringing 2 types through each of them. In previous runs, we've used my 6 favorite types, the 6 types in the middle of the pack, and now it's time to use my 6 least favorite. Dragon and electric types, there's really nothing wrong with, I just like everything else a little more. Fighting, psychic, and dark, I hate to say it, but they're just kinda boring. And the water type, which routinely finds new ways to disappoint me. We start by spinning a wheel to decide which type is going down which path. For the gyms, we'll be using Dragon and Water type Pokemon. Against the Titans, we'll be using Psychic and Electric type Pokemon. And for Team Star, that leaves us with Fighting and Dake type Pokemon. So, without further ado, let's get into it. We start the game by grabbing our starter. We have to pick Quaxley, the water type starter, and yeah, no, I'm kidding, I wouldn't be caught dead using this. We are going with Sprigatito. They might not be a viable type now, but once they're fully evolved, they become a dark type. Now, we might be shooting ourselves in the knee here by locking ourselves out of a powerful Pokemon until level 36. But I think it's worth it if it means we can pass the ugly duckling onto Nemona. We name Sprigatito Milton, and it quickly puts Nemona's Quaxley to shame. The Poké Path where we catch our real starter for this run, Paolumu the Palmy. We can head over to South Province Area 1 next, where we catch McDuff the Azurill. It's only a fairy type now, but it'll quickly evolve into a water type. We beat Nemona once again, and that pretty much opens the world up to us. We head back to the Inlet Grotto, where we catch Dagas the Houndour. At South Province Area 2, we catch Vare the Eevee. And at Area 3, we catch Zinogre the Shinx. And after that, McDuff evolves into a Marill. And with our first water type, that means we can take on the first gym leader. Her gym challenge is normally a literal walk in the park, but today it was a little more trouble than it normally is. But we eventually make it through, and we can take on Katie, the first gym leader. She starts with her Nimble, and we bring in McDuff. We outspeed and set up a defense curl, boosting our defense as Nimble hits us with a weak struggle bug. On the following turn, we use Rollout. This move's power is doubled from us using defense curl, and every subsequent time it lands, its power is doubled again. We fail to get the KO the first time Nimble is hit, but it goes down to the second hit from Rollout. Tarantula is in next, but it's outsped and taken out by a single Rollout. And finally, we have to deal with Katie's bug-type Teddiursa. Unfortunately, our Rollout misses here, and Teddiursa can hit us with a Fury Swipes. Luckily, it only hits us twice though. We start another Rollout chain on the next turn. Our first hit doesn't do too much damage, and Teddiursa hits us with a Fury Cutter, leaving us at just over half HP. Our second Rollout leaves Teddiursa with what must be 1 HP left. It retaliates with a Fury Cutter, but it's not nearly enough to take out McDuff, and a third Rollout finishes off Teddiursa, winning us our first gym badge. With her out of the way, we can evolve Zinogre into a Luxio, and we can challenge our first Titan Pokemon, Cloth. And we'll bring in our newly evolved Luxio to take it on. It outspeeds us and hits us with a block, so we won't be able to swap out. In retaliation, we hit it with a Spark, not dealing too much damage. It lands a Vice Grip on the next turn, taking out a third of our HP before we can land another Spark, leaving it with just over half of its HP. Vice Grip brings us down to 15 HP, but our next Spark is not only a critical hit, but it also paralyzes Cloth. So we can outspeed it on the next turn, and a fourth Spark sends it packing. For the next phase of the fight, we'll be starting with Paolumu to fight alongside Arven's Shelder. Both of our Pokemon are outsped, and Shelder's hit by a Rock Smash. It doesn't take too much damage, and Paolumu can retaliate with a Nuzzle. This barely does any damage to Cloth, but it paralyzes it. And Shelder closes out the turn by using Leer, lowering Cloth's defense. We spend the next minute lowering Cloth's attack with Growl, while Shelder keeps lowering its defense with Leer. But once Paolumu gets in range to be taken out by a critical hit, it's time to swap back into Zinogre. We Terastallize to give its Spark a little more power, and it brings Cloth well below half HP. And despite its Anger Shell ability activating, raising its speed, we're still faster and finish it off with a second Spark. So that's one Titan down. This raises the level cap for our two Electric-type Pokemon, so we're able to evolve Paolumu all the way up to a Palmot. And we're also able to pick up a Water Stone, so we can evolve Vare into a Vaporeon, which will be needed to take on the next gym leader, Brassius. He starts with his Petilil, and we bring in the newly evolved Vare. We immediately Terastallize into a normal type and hit Petilil with an Icy Wind. But it's not enough to get the KO, and Petilil hits us with a Sleep Powder in return. Vare ends up staying asleep for 3 turns, constantly being hit by Mega Drains. And when he finally wakes up, he misses his Icy Wind and is forced to take another Mega Drain. Luckily, because of our high special defense, we still have over half our HP. Another Icy Wind doesn't miss, and Petilil goes down. Smoliv is in next, but unlike Petilil, it can't handle an Icy Wind, and it goes down. And finally, we have to deal with Brassius' Grass-type Sudowoodo. We outspeed it and hit it with a Charm, cutting its attack in half before it hits us with a Rock Throw. Luckily, it doesn't do too much damage, and we can go on the offensive now. We hit it with 2 Icy Winds, leaving it with just a sliver of HP left. But we're also brought down to only 14 HP. Not wanting to risk missing Icy Wind a second time, we use Covet, which is enough to take out Sudowoodo, winning us our second gym badge. And thanks to that fight, McDuff is able to evolve into an Azumarill. While we're over here, we can go to East Province Area 1 where we catch Banna the Murkrow. But after that, we head over to West Province Area 1 where we catch Rhine the Mankey. And now it's time to take on another Titan, a Bombardier. But thanks to Paolumu, it doesn't get to make a single move and it quickly goes down. For the next group of Pokemon we'll be catching, we start at South Province Area 4, where we find what will soon evolve into a dragon, Kale the Swablu. At South Province Area 5, we catch an actual dragon, Rosaria the Goomy. And in the sea just south of here, we find an incredibly ugly fish who we name Petrus. Moving over to the Eastern Sea, we catch a significantly less ugly fish, Rydell. And in East Province Area 2, we catch Maralda the Marini. We'll be needing all the help we can get for the next gym. But first, we have to take on Team Star's Dark-type base and their leader, Giacomo. He starts with his Pawniard, and we bring in Dagas the Houndour. We outspeed, and a single Incinerate manages to take it out. And in comes his Starmobile. This time, we're the ones being outsped. It starts hitting us with Wicked Torque, and we're only able to lower its defense 2 times before we're forced to switch out. We bring in Banna, who loses just under a third of his HP from Wicked Torque. We're outsped and hit by a Swift, losing about half of our remaining HP before we can land a wing attack, which doesn't do a whole lot of damage. We're hit by another Swift, and we're brought down to just 2 HP before we land another wing attack. We swap into Rhine the Mankey next, and he's able to tank the Swift decently well. We Terrastalize him to boost the power of his next fighting type move, and the Starmobile just hits us with a metal sound, cutting our special defense in half. But that doesn't matter because Rhine hits it with a low kick, and it's enough to get the KO, winning us the fight. The next gym we'll be facing is a really tough electric type gym, and as it is right now, our water types do not stand a chance. But by beating the next Titan, we'll be able to get on top of this building where we can find a TM that'll give a huge increase in power to Bruxish and Veluza. And by Bruxish and Veluza, I mean just Bruxish. Because while training against Tauros to raise its attack stat, Rydell ends up getting a critical hit against an Anger Point Tauros, maxing out its attack and then getting annihilated in a single attack. So yeah, our chances of winning this are quickly dwindling. We decide to get our third Nemona battle out of the way, but she's not strong enough to be a real threat yet, and she quickly goes down. While preparing to take on the next Titan, we decide to catch our next batch of Pokémon. Starting at the Asado Desert, we take on a Flittle, which we accidentally kill. Great job. We move on to West Province Area 2, where we catch Yorshka the Cyclozar. And heading over to Area 3, we find this person playing in creative mode. And they just disappear. But don't let that strange occurrence distract you from the fact that we just caught our Titan killer, Kadachi the Pachirisu. And moving back over to the east, not only do we catch Basilgoose the Voltorb at Area 3, but we also find the rare River Makuhita. We unfortunately kill it, but luckily enough, there just happens to be a second one. We're then able to evolve Dagas into a Houndoom, and we're ready to take on the next Titan, Orthworm. We start with Kadachi, who outspeeds Orthworm and hits it with a Nuzzle, paralyzing it. And Orthworm retaliates by headbutting us with its fists. We're able to hit it with 3 charms before it can move again, minimizing its attack, but it hits us with a wrap, so we're trapped now. Luckily for us, Kadachi is just able to outpace Orthworm's damage and send it packing with an Electro Ball. The second phase of the fight goes pretty much the exact same, except Toadschool is able to take off some of the aggro. So Kadachi isn't even close to dying when they take out Orthworm with an Electro Ball, winning us the fight. We now have the hops to get onto the building where we find the Psychic Fangs TM. And with that, we're ready to take on Iono, the electric type gym leader. She opens with her Wattrel, and we bring in Vare. We Terrastalize into a normal type before hitting Wattrel with an Icy Wind. Unfortunately, we just barely missed the KO, and thanks to Wattrel's Wind Power ability, its next attack is powered up. It uses Spark and takes out nearly a third of our HP, and unfortunately, we get paralyzed here. It outspeeds us and lands a Spark on the following turn. This time it's a critical hit and brings us below half HP. But luckily, Vare is able to move, and we take out Wattrel with a Water Gun. Bellibolt is in next, and it outspeeds us and hits Vare with a Spark, leaving him with barely any HP left. We land a Water Pulse, but unfortunately we don't get the Confusion. And thanks to Bellibolt's ability, its next electric type move is powered up. so we have to be really careful about who we're switching into. In the end, I decide it's best to sacrifice Meralda, who goes down to a single spark. But now we can safely bring in McDuff. We outspeed and land an Aqua Tail, but it's not enough to take out Bellibolt. Its ability activates, boosting the power of Spark, which leaves McDuff hanging on by a thread, and unfortunately, this causes paralysis too. So now Bellibolt outspeeds us, and another Spark takes out McDuff. We bring in Rosaria next, and she has to tank 2 Sparks before she's finally able to take out Bellibolt with a Dragon Breath. Next in is her Luxio, and unfortunately it's able to take out Rosaria with a Bite. So now we have to bring in our ace for this fight, Petrus. We outspeed Luxio, and a single Psychic Fangs is enough to take it out. And finally, we have to deal with her Electric-type Mismagius. We outspeed and land the Psychic Fangs, but Mismagius survives with barely any HP left. And in retaliation, Mismagius hits us with a Confuse Ray, confusing us, obviously. I really don't want to risk hitting ourselves in confusion and losing this fight, so we decide to swap into Vare, sacrificing him. But luckily, Mismagius uses Hex, which we're currently immune to. I'm pretty sure Petrus should survive 1 attack from Mismagius, so we swap into him, and Mismagius just uses Confuse Ray again. So it's back to Vare, but luckily for us, Mismagius just used Hex again. We can swap back into Petrus again, and this time Mismagius hits us with a Charge Beam. And we survive off of just 18 HP. We're able to outspeed and land another Psychic Fangs, taking out Mismagius, and winning us our 3rd gym badge. With her out of the way, we go grab a Duskstone and evolve Vanna into a Honchkrow. And we gotta take on Team Star's Fire-type base next, and their leader, Mela. She starts with her Torkoal, and we bring in Dagas the Houndoom. We outspeed and use Nasty Plot, doubling our special attack as Torkoal uses Flame Wheel. But thanks to our Flash Fire ability, we're immune to it, and we can land a Dark Pulse on the next turn for the 1-hit KO. And in comes her Starmobile. And luckily for us, it looks like the only move the Starmobile has that can hurt Dagas is Swift, which only does 8 damage to us. So Dagas is in no danger here, and a few Dark Pulses take it out, winning us the fight. Before taking on the 4th gym leader, we could really do with catching a few new Pokemon. Starting at the Tag Tree Thicket, we find Welliger the Psyduck, and we can head back to South Province Area 1 to catch ourselves a Paldean Wooper. We won't be using it, but over at Cascarafka, we can trade it for a Jotonian Wooper, a Water Ground type one, and I really wish I remembered this trade was here before our battle with Iono. We probably could have saved our entire team. Anyways, while training, we're able to evolve Basilgoose into an Electrode, Zinogre into a Luxray, Rhine into a Primeape, and Marvelous Manchester into a Quagsire. And with that, we're ready to take on Kofu, the 4th gym leader. He starts with a Veluza, and we bring in Petrus. We outspeed and land a Crunch, but it's just barely not enough to get the KO, and it retaliates with a Slash. It doesn't do too much damage, but that could easily stack up over the course of a fight. We take it out with a priority Aqua Jet, and next up is Wugtrio. We're outsped and hit by a Headbutt, which leaves us at half HP while flinching us, so they can land another Headbutt. We're brought down to 12 HP, but this time we can move, and a single Psychic Fangs takes out Wugtrio. And in comes his final Pokemon, his Water-type Crabominable. we swap into Marvelous Manchester as it uses Slam, and luckily it doesn't do too much damage to us. But luckily we get all that HP back on the next turn when it uses Crab Hammer, because we have the Water Absorb ability. This also means we're free to hit it with a Yawn this turn, so it's going to sleep at the end of the next turn now. It goes for another Slam, but we swap into Yorshka, who's left with just over half of her HP. Crabominable goes to sleep, and we can start hitting it with Breaking Swipes. Each hit lowering Crabominable's attack even further, so by the time it finally wakes up, its Rock Smash doesn't do too much damage to Yorshka. We hit it with a U-turn, leaving it with just a sliver of HP left, and we swap into Welliger, who finishes the job with a Confusion, winning us our 4th gym badge. After this, we get to take on Atticus, the leader of Team Star's Poison-type base. He starts with a Skuntank, and we bring in Rhine. We outspeed and use Bulk Up, raising our attack and defense, and Skuntank hits us with a Toxic, badly poisoning us. But because Rhine is holding the Petra Berry, we're immediately cured. Not wanting to risk being hit by another Toxic, we just go for Earthquake here, getting the one-hit KO. Muck comes in next, but another Earthquake is a one-hit KO. Next in is a Revavroom. We outspeed and decide to use another Bulk Up. Revavroom then hits us with an Iron Head, and despite having double defense, it still does quite a bit of damage. So we finish it off with an Earthquake, and in comes his Starmobile. This time, we're the ones being outsped, and it hits us with a Noxious Torque, dealing a decent amount of damage, and getting the 10% chance to poison us. We land an Earthquake in retaliation, and it only takes out about half of the Starmobile's HP. On the following turn, another Noxious Torque takes out Rhine. If we didn't get poisoned, I'm pretty sure we would have survived that. But now we're in a pretty tough spot. Neither of my other Pokemon can really take on a Starmobile on their own. We bring in Dagas. We're outsped and hit hard by a Noxious Torque, but we survive and we're able to land a Dark Pulse, bringing the Starmobile down to about a fourth of its HP. Unfortunately, we do not survive a second Noxious Torque, and Dagas goes down. All we have left is Banna the Honchkrow. We Terrastalize into a pure Flying type before we're hit by a critical hit Noxious Torque that also poisons Banna, and we're left with just 26 HP. We land a Wing Attack, but it's not enough to take out the Starmobile. Luckily for us, Banna knows the priority move Sucker Punch, and it's just enough to take out the Starmobile, winning us the fight and saving the run. For the next group of Pokemon we're catching and evolving, we start at the Dalipaza Passage, where we catch Kurapeko via Spathra, and heading to the West Paldean Sea, we find Saurian the Bombardier. We're also able to evolve Welliger into a Golduck, Kale into an Altaria, and Milton finally evolves into the Dark-type Meowscarada. So with that, we're ready to take on the 5th gym leader, Larry. He starts with his Kamala, and we bring in Vare. Now, for those of you who don't know me, I have a little hobby that I like to call making questionable and foolish decisions, and that's on full display here at the start of this battle. For whatever reason, I taught Vare the move Growl, which lowers the target's attack by 1 stage. But earlier in the run, I had Vare using Charm, a move that lowers the target's attack by 2 stages. Luckily for us, it really doesn't matter. Once Vare goes to sleep, we're able to swap into Yorshka without the fear of being hit by a Yawn from Kamala. We then use Shed Tail, swapping into Kale and giving them a substitute. And with substitute up, we'll be immune to moves like Yawn and Glare. We can then use Cotton Guard to max out our defense before going on the offensive. We start hammering away with Dragon Pulses. Dragon Pulse only takes out about a third of its HP, and Komala is able to take out this substitute with a Sucker Punch before it goes down. Next in is the Dunsparce, and luckily for us, we came prepared just in case we lost the substitute. We outspeed and have Kale use Safeguard. This protects him from having status conditions inflicted on him for the next few turns. We start to run low on Dragon Pulses, so we have to finish off the Dunsparce with a round. And in comes Larry's final Pokemon, his pure normal type Staraptor. But thanks to all those Cotton Guards from earlier, Staraptor doesn't actually do a whole lot of damage against Kale, and we're able to take it down just a couple turns later, winning us the fight and the 5th gym badge. Right after, we have another fight with Nemona without the opportunity to change our team up, but there's still not a lot worth talking about here. Vare easily takes out her Lycanroc, and her Pomo and Gumi are really no match for Marvelous Manchester, who's also able to deal enough damage to Quaquaval for Petrus to come in and finish the job with a Psychic Fangs. Right after this, we can head over to Glaceado Mountain, where in a Terra raid, we catch Tyon the Sneasel, and quickly evolve him into a Weavile. And then, we can take on the 6th gym leader, Rhyme. For this gym, we get to have a double battle, and she starts with her Banette and Mimikyu against Yorshka and Vare. Banette starts by using the priority Sucker Punch, but it fails because Yorshka is using Shed Tail. We swap into Manchester, who's immediately hit by a slash from Mimikyu. It ends up being a critical hit and takes out the substitute that comes with Manchester. And Vare ends the turn by using Growl, which now has a point by the way because it hits both opponents. Mimikyu hits Manchester with a slash, barely doing any damage, and Vare is able to get off another Growl, further lowering the ghost Pokemon's attack. Banette then uses Icy Wind, dealing a small amount of damage to both my Pokemon, but also lowering their speed. And finally, Manchester hits Mimikyu with a Mud Shot, lowering its speed and breaking its disguise ability. On the next turn, Banette fails another Sucker Punch, and Mimikyu lands another slash which barely does any damage. Vare is then able to set up a Calm Mind, raising his special attack and special defense. And Manchester hits Mimikyu with a Yawn, so it's going to sleep at the end of the next turn. The following turn is the exact same as the last, except it turns out Banette has the Insomnia ability and can't be put to sleep. We get off one more turn of Calm Mind, and Manchester hits Banette with an Aqua Tail, dealing a solid amount of damage. On the next turn, Mimikyu wakes up and lands its slash for barely any damage, and Vare uses Surf. Mimikyu and Banette both go down, and thanks to Manchester's Water Absorb ability, it gains back almost all of the HP it lost over the course of the last few turns. Next in is Rhyme's Houndstone and her Ghost-type Toxtricity. We Terrastalize Vare into a normal type in case Toxtricity uses Discharge, but it just goes for a Hyper Voice. Vare barely takes any damage, and Manchester takes a decent amount. Houndstone uses Phantom Force, disappearing for the turn, and Vare lands a Surf, getting the one-hit KO on Toxtricity. Houndstone lands its Phantom Force on the next turn, but it was targeting Vare, who's now immune to Ghost-type moves. So we land one more Surf and get the KO, winning us our 6th gym badge. After the battle, Hassel approaches us, telling us how great we did in that fight, citing our unrelenting offensive. I don't know if we were watching the same fight, but I spent the first hour of that fight setting up. But with that out of the way, we can catch our next group of Pokemon. At North Province Area 3, we find Zeke the Hawlucha. At the Alfrenata Cave, we find Vandam the Makuhita. And at South Province Area 6, we find Magala the Gotharita, who we quickly evolve into a Gothitelle. We have another Nemona fight here, but it goes by exactly the same as the last one. So we can move right along to taking on Tulip, the 7th gym leader. She starts with Farigiraf, and we bring in Yorshka. And can you guess what strategy we're going for? That's right, we're doing a setup sweep, because that's all I ever do. We start hitting Farigiraf with Breaking Swipes to lower its attack so we can bring out another Pokemon to set up on it. Unfortunately, we get a critical hit and kill it. Awesome. Gardevoir comes in, and we use Shed Tail, creating a decoy and swapping out. We bring in Vare, and the substitute is immediately broken by a Dazzling Gleam. We Terastallize Vare into a normal type as Gardevoir uses Energy Ball, so we can at least avoid super effective damage. And then we use Aqua Ring, so we'll be restoring even more HP at the end of the round on top of our leftovers. We start setting up Calm Minds while Gardevoir chips away at our HP. And once we're at about half HP, we hit Gardevoir with a Surf, getting the one-hit KO. Espathra is in next, and its Psychic really doesn't do a lot of damage to us, and a Surf takes it out. Her final Pokemon is her Psychic-type Florges. Its Petal Blizzard doesn't do a lot of damage to us, and a couple Surfs takes it out, winning us the 7th gym badge. Yeah, the plan going awry wasn't ever gonna stop me from not setup sweeping. Frick. Next up, we need to take on our 4th Titan, a Great Tusk. We start with Kuropeko, it outspeeds, and Lumina Crash ends the first phase instantly. Yeah, I didn't think it'd do that much damage. It survives the Lumina Crash during the second phase, but it just attacks Arven's Scovillain, so we're free to attack it again and get the KO. Easy peasy. But now we can catch and evolve another group of Pokemon. At the North Province Sea, we find Hodrick the Skrelp. And the next two Team Star bases are huge concerns for us. So at the Castaroya Lake, we catch Gaelgar the Krogunk, whose Poison type will be a great help against the Fairy type Star base. And we'll need something that resists the Fighting type moves of the Fighting Star base. So we head over to the Sakarat Trail, where we can catch ourselves a Heracross. Where we can catch ourselves a Zoroark. Welcome to the team, Dixon. Oh, never mind, that name's not allowed. Welcome to the team, Lao. We evolve Vandam into a Hariyama, Gaelgar into a Toxicroak, and Hodrick into a Dragalge. So now we're ready to take on the 8th and final gym leader. Grusha opens with Frostmoth, and we bring in Yorshka. We can outspeed it and hit it with an Overheat for the one-hit KO, but our special attack is cut in half. Beartic is in next, so we use Shed Tail. We swap into Welliger as Beartic uses Icicle Crash, and it breaks the substitute that Yorshka leaves for Welliger. Welliger outspeeds and lands a Power Gem, taking out more than half of Beartic's HP, and it retaliates with an Earthquake, taking out much less than half of Welliger's HP. One more Power Gem, and it goes down. Titan is in next, and it's the same story. We land a Power Gem, taking out more than half of its HP, but this time it uses the less effective Ice Spinner, not doing a lot of damage, but bringing us below half HP, and it goes down to a second Power Gem. Grusha's final Pokemon is his Ice-type Altaria, so we swap into Marvelous Manchester as it uses Hurricane. It takes out just under half of our HP, but also leaves Manchester confused. A second Hurricane hits, bringing Manchester down to less than a quarter of his HP, and luckily, he's able to break through confusion and land a Rock Slide, taking out just under half of Altaria's HP. Knowing we can't take another attack, we swap into Hodrick. Altaria uses another Hurricane, but luckily it misses this time. Knowing Altaria will be going for a super effective Ice-type move, we Terrastalize into a Water-type, so we now resist Altaria's incoming Ice Beam. It barely does any damage, but unfortunately, we end up missing our Aqua Tail on the next turn. Altaria lands a Hurricane on the next turn, dealing a solid amount of damage, but we also land an Aqua Tail, bringing Altaria down to just about a quarter of its HP. On the following turn, Altaria lands yet another Hurricane. This time it confuses Hodrick, but luckily he breaks through and can land another Aqua Tail. But we just barely miss getting the KO on Altaria. On the off chance we don't survive this next attack, we need to swap out. So we bring in Petrus as Altaria goes for another Hurricane, and luckily it misses this time. So Petrus is able to finish the job with a priority Aqua Jet, finishing off the 8th and final gym leader. And right after that, we get to take on Ortega, the leader of Team Star's Fairy-type base. He opens with an Azumarill, and we bring in Milton. We outspeed, and a single Flower Trick takes it out. Next in is Wigglytuff. We outspeed it and hit it with a Charm, cutting its attack in half before it can hit us with a Play Rough, which now takes out about a third of our HP. We're able to land 2 more Charms, completely minimizing Wigglytuff's attack, and we're only brought down to a third of our HP. It really doesn't make a difference, but for whatever reason, we swap into Gale Guard normally instead of using U-turn. Any damage Wigglytuff can do to Gale Guard is immediately healed back by our leftovers, and we're free to set up 3 nasty plots, completely maximizing our special attack. Wigglytuff goes down to a single Sludge Bomb. Next in is Darkspawn, and it outspeeds Toxicroak and hits us with a Play Rough, bringing us to just over half of our HP before it also goes down to a Sludge Bomb. And finally, we have to deal with this Starmobile. It hits us hard with a Steel Roller, leaving Galegar in the red, but in retaliation, we land a Sludge Bomb, getting the one-hit KO and winning us the fight. And with that, we can catch and evolve the final Pokemon of the run. At North Province Area 1, we find Priscilla the Dratini, who we quickly evolve into a Dragonite. And at North Province Area 2, we catch a Phalanx, who we name the Ponspectors. So now, let's get into the final fights of the game. Starting with Aerie, the leader of Team Star's Fighting-type base. She opens with her Toxicroak, and we bring in Banna. We're outsped and hit hard by a Poison Jab, but we can retaliate with a Psychic for the one-hit KO. Next in is Annihilate, and unfortunately, it also outspeeds us and lands a close combat, which gets the KO on Banna. We bring in Saurian next, and we're once again outsped and hit by a close combat, leaving us with just 43 HP. We retaliate with a Brave Bird for the one-hit KO, but unfortunately, recoil damage also takes out Saurian. We send out Zeke next, and she sends out Passimian. And this is where we're going to start our shenanigans. We hit Passimian with 3 Feather Dances, lowering its attack to the absolute minimum. We roost to restore as much of Zeke's HP as possible in case something goes wrong, and we swap into the Ponspectors. From there, we start by using No Retreat, which boosts all of our stats by a stage, but we can no longer swap out. And then we can use Bulk Up to max out our attack and defense. Unfortunately, while doing this, Passimian is hitting us with Rock Tombs, which constantly lower our speed. So we won't be getting the first hit off on Lucario or her Starmobile. But once we're fully set up, we go for a Zen Headbutt, which misses, but the second one hits. Next in is Lucario. Lucario hits us hard with the Aura Sphere, taking out half of our HP before it goes down to a Brick Break. And finally, we have to deal with her Starmobile. It starts by using a Combat Torque, dealing a pitiful amount of damage, and we retaliate with a Zen Headbutt, leaving it with just about a third of its HP. It hits us with another Combat Torque, leaving us with a nice amount of HP, and then we miss another Zen Headbutt. Aerie then decides to start setting up stat boosts, but goes down to the following Zen Headbutt. And with that, that's all of Team Star's bases done. Next, we have to deal with the final Titan, Dondozo. We bring in Zinogre, and a Spark deals massive damage to it. It hits us with a Water Pulse, but it's pretty negligible, and a second Spark sends it packing. The second phase goes exactly the same. 2 Sparks, and Dondozo goes down. But now we have to face... Frick. I just turned Australian. But now we have to face the real Titan, Tatsugiri. Zinogre outspeeds it and hits it with a critical hit play rough, dealing a massive amount of damage, and Tatsugiri responds by using Muddy Water. This also does quite a bit of damage, and it lowers our accuracy. So, not wanting any shenanigans, we swap into Kadachi. But as we do swap out, Arven's Greedent hits Tatsugiri with a takedown, taking out Tatsugiri and itself. So yeah, thanks Arven, that's all the Titans down now. Anyways, we're now ready to take on the Elite Four, starting with the Ground-type trainer, Rika. She opens with her Whiscash, and we bring in Welliger. We outspeed and hit it with a Grass Knot, which doesn't do nearly as much as I had been hoping for, and we're hit by an Earth Power. We lose less than a third of our HP, and a second Grass Knot finishes off Whiscash. Donphan comes in next, and we hit it with a Grass Knot as well. This time it's brought to 1 HP thanks to its sturdy ability, and it retaliates with an Earthquake, bringing Welliger down to just 17 HP. One more Grass Knot, and Donphan goes down. Next in is Dugtrio. So we swap into Manchester as it uses Earthquake. It deals quite a bit of damage, but we don't need to be too concerned yet. It outspeeds us on the next turn and sets up a Sandstorm as we go for Aqua Tail, but unfortunately we miss. It lands another Earthquake, and we miss another Aqua Tail. A third Earthquake lands, bringing us down to just 42 HP, but Marvelous Manchester finally lands that Aqua Tail, getting the one-hit KO on Dugtrio. Camerupt comes in next, and we swap into Vare on an Earth Power, who tanks it pretty well. We can outspeed on the next turn, and a single Surf takes it out. And finally, we have to deal with her pure Ground-type Clodsire. It can threaten Vare with an Earthquake, so we have to swap out. We bring in Kale. It's a bit of a slog, but he's able to whittle down Clodsire and get the KO, beating the first member of the Elite Four. Next up is Poppy, the Steel-type trainer. She starts with Copperajah, and we bring in Welliger. We outspeed and land a Focus Blast, which just barely misses getting the KO on Copperajah, and it's able to set up a Stealth Rock, so that's great. We can land a Grass Knot on the next turn, getting the KO. Magnezone is in next, So we swap into Yorshka as it uses Light Screen. We can have Yorshka use Rapid Spin to clear the Stealth Rock, and Magnezone hits us with a Flash Cannon, taking out more than half of our HP. And we can't threaten a KO in return, so we have to swap out again. We bring in Marvelous Manchester, who takes significantly less damage from Flash Cannon. Manchester is brought to just over half HP by a Tri-Attack, and we can retaliate with an Earthquake for the KO. Corviknight comes in next, and it hits Manchester with a critical hit Brave Bird, nearly taking him out. But Manchester now has the opportunity to land a Yawn. So Corviknight's going to sleep next turn. We then swap into Kale, who has to tank a Brave Bird, but he handles it pretty well, and Corviknight goes to sleep. While it's sleeping, we're able to set up 2 Cotton Guards, maxing out our defense, and then we can take it out with 2 Flamethrowers. Bronzong is in next, and it loses half of its HP to Kale's Flamethrower, and it retaliates with a Zen Headbutt, which barely does anything to us. It unfortunately survives another Flamethrower off of barely any HP, and lands an Iron Head. But we take it out on the next turn, and in comes Poppy's final Pokemon, a Tinkaton. We both Terrastalize our Pokemon, her into a pure Steel type, and us into a normal type. She outspeeds and uses what would have been a super effective Play Rough, but now that we're a normal type, it doesn't do as much damage. And we can retaliate with a Flamethrower for a pretty solid amount of damage. On the following turn, she lands a Gigaton Hammer, bringing Kale down to just 40 HP. And our Flamethrower leaves Tinkaton just outside of the red. Tinkaton uses Stone Edge on the next turn, but luckily it doesn't get a critical hit, and it only ends up dealing 11 damage, and Kale is able to finish off Tinkaton with a Flamethrower, beating the second Elite Four member. For our battle against Larry and his Flying type team, we bring in Priscilla against his Tropius. We spam Dragon Dance, boosting our attack and speed, and then we sweep his entire team. And then we do the same thing to Hassel and his Dragon type team. So yeah, great job Priscilla. Killing it. But with that, we now have to face the champion, Geeta. She brings in a Spathra, and we bring in Petrus. Petrus outspeeds and takes it out with a single crunch. Great job, Petrus. King Gambit comes in next, for some reason. So we swap into Welliger as it uses a Kowtow Cleave. It gets a critical hit, and we're left with just 17 HP. But luckily, we're able to land a Focus Blast for the one-hit KO. Go-Goat comes in next, so we swap into Hodrick as it uses Horn Leech and barely does any damage. She starts setting up Bulk Ups and just goes down to a couple Sludge Bombs without doing anything, so that's great. Next in is Avalugg. We hit it with a Sludge Bomb, taking out more than half of its HP, and then it lands an Earthquake, getting a critical hit and killing Hodrick. Great. We bring in Yorshka next, and an Overheat finishes off Avalugg. Next in is Veluza. We use Shed Tail to safely swap into Petrus. Veluza uses Ice Fang and fails to break the substitute. And we're able to outspeed on the next turn and take out Veluza with a single crunch. All that's left is her Rock-type Glamora. But we can Terrastalize Petrus into a pure Water type and take out Glamora with a single Liquidation, winning us the fight. Right after this, we need to take on Director Clavel. He starts with an Oranguru, and we bring in, and I'm saying this in air quotes, Milton. We start the fight by setting up a Nasty Plot, doubling our special attack as Oranguru uses Yawn. We set up one more Nasty Plot and Oranguru uses Yawn again for some reason, and we're put to sleep. Luckily, we were holding a Chesto Berry and immediately wake up. We go for a Night Daze, but we miss, and Oranguru uses Reflect for some reason. Night Daze doesn't miss on the next turn, and Oranguru goes down. Abomasnow is in next, but we can hit it with a Flamethrower for the one-hit KO. Gyarados comes in next, but Night Daze is enough for a one-hit KO. Amoonguss and Polteageist go down to a Flamethrower and Night Daze respectively, and all that's left is his pure Fire-type Skeledirge. And it also goes down to a single Night Daze, winning us the fight without taking any damage. Next up is our fight with Penny. She opens up with her Umbreon, and we bring in Galgar. We start by setting up a nasty plot, and she uses Psychic, which we're immune to. We use another nasty plot, and she uses Psychic again, for some reason. We set up our third and final nasty plot, and guess what? She still is using Psychic. We then proceed to take out Umbreon, Leafeon, Flareon, and Vaporeon, each with one hit. Jolteon actually outspeeds us and hits us pretty hard with a Thunder, leaving us with just 29 HP and breaking our illusion. Surprise, it was actually Lao the whole time. And Lao then uses Flamethrower for the one-hit KO. Finally, we have to deal with her Sylveon. Unfortunately, Flamethrower is just barely not enough for a one-hit KO, and Lao ends up going down to a Moonblast. We bring in the real Galgar, and a Poison Jab finishes off Sylveon, winning us the fight. Next up is our fight with Arven. He opens with his Greedent, and we bring in Kuropeko. We outspeed and hit it hard with a Lumina Crash before we're hit just as hard with a Body Slam. But a second Lumina Crash is more than enough to get the KO on Greedent. Scovillain comes in next, and we land another Lumina Crash, this time taking out more than half of Scovillain's HP, but a Fire Blast takes out Kuropeko. We bring in Zinogre, who outspeeds and takes out Scovillain with a Crunch. Next in is Garganacl. We outspeed and hit it with a Spark, which takes out about a third of its HP before it can set up a Stealth Rock. We land another Spark, taking out another third of its HP. And in retaliation, Garganacl uses Stone Edge, but it misses and a third Spark takes it out. Toedscruel is in next, and it actually outspeeds Zinogre, and hits us pretty hard with a Power Whip. But we can retaliate with an Ice Fang for the one-hit KO. Cloyster is in next, and it actually survives a Spark from Zinogre thanks to its insane defense. But it gets paralyzed and can't move. So another Spark takes it out. All that's left is Mabostiff, who outspeeds and takes out Zinogre with a single Crunch. We bring in Kadachi next. We can outspeed Mabostiff and hit it with a Nuzzle, not doing a lot of damage, but we paralyze it. But Mabostiff breaks through paralysis and hits us hard with a Crunch, leaving Kadachi with just 20 HP left. We land a Super Fang, taking out half of Mabostiff's remaining HP, and it breaks through paralysis once again and finishes off Kadachi with a Crunch. But now we can bring in Paolumu, who ends Mabostiff with a close combat, winning us the fight. But now we can take on the final Nemona battle. She starts with her Lycanroc, and we bring in Vare. Lycanroc sets up a Stealth Rock before being sent to the Shadow Realm by a Surf. Next in is Palmot. We swap into Yorshka as it uses Double Shock, dealing a decent amount of damage. We outspeed on the next turn and use Rapid Spin, clearing the stealth rocks that Lycanroc had set up. But that gives Palma a great opportunity to use close combat. Yorshka survives off of 1 HP, but it doesn't matter because it just uses quick attack on the next turn, finishing Yorshka off. We send in Marvelous Manchester next, and he takes quite a bit of damage from a close combat, but he can retaliate with an Earthquake for the KO. Next in is Nemona's Dunsparce. We swap into Vandam as it uses Hyper Drill, dealing a solid amount of damage. On the next turn it outspeeds and lands another Hyper Drill. We survive and retaliate with a Drain Punch, restoring a lot of the HP we lost. But Dunsparce survives and can land a third Hyper Drill before being taken out by a second Drain Punch. Orthworm comes in next, and it outspeeds and hits us hard with an Iron Tail, dealing a solid amount of damage and lowering our defense. But Vandam can retaliate with a Drain Punch, bringing us back up to a respectable amount of HP and nearly taking out Orthworm. Orthworm uses Iron Tail once again, and Vandam is brought to the brink of death, but we're able to land another Drain Punch for the KO on Orthworm. Next in is Goodra. So we swap into Vare on a Dragon Pulse. It does a decent amount of damage, and we can start retaliating with Aurora Beam. We trade a few blows, but unfortunately it looks like Goodra is going to end up winning, so we have to swap out. We bring in Tyon the Weavile on a Dragon Pulse, and it takes out a solid chunk of his HP. But we can outspeed on the next turn and end Goodra with an Icicle Crash. Next in is Nemona's final Pokémon, a pure Water-type Quaquaval. Tyon can outspeed and hit it with a Night Slash, but it takes out less than half of its HP, and it can retaliate with an Aqua Step for the KO while boosting its speed. But we can now swap into Marvelous Manchester. Nemona routinely forgets that this thing has Water Absorb and uses Aqua Step, restoring a lot of our HP. We land an Earthquake, nearly taking out Quaquaval, and it uses Aerial Ace on the next turn, but it's not nearly enough to even threaten us, so a second Earthquake ends up taking out Quaquaval, winning us the fight. And with that, we can finally enter Area 0, and we parkour our way to the bottom, where we have our final boss fight. And for our final team, we have Kale the Altaria, representing the Dragon types. For the fighting types, we have Vandam the Hariyama. For Electric, we have Basilgoose the Electrode. For Psychic, we have Magala the Gothitelle. Milton the Meowscarada will be representing the Dark type. And for Water, we have Petrus the Bruxish. So let's get into this final fight against AI Seda. She starts with her Slitherwing, and we bring in Kale. She outspeeds and hits us with a Lunge, dealing a decent bit of damage and lowering our attack. But we're up to our usual shenanigans, and we start setting up Cotton Guards. She lands a Zen Headbutt on the next turn. Luckily we don't flinch, and we can set up our second and final Cotton Guard. One more Zen Headbutt hits, and once again we don't flinch, and we can land a Brave Bird for the one-hit KO. Next in is her Scream Tail. We Terrastallize into a normal type as it uses Ice Punch, barely doing any damage to us, and we retaliate with a Flamethrower, also barely doing any damage. It then starts spamming Drain Punch while we're just fishing for a burn on Flamethrower. And unfortunately, we never get it. We do get its HP low enough for us to take it out with a Brave Bird though. Next in is Brute Bonnet. We outspeed and hit it with a Moonblast, leaving it with just over half of its HP before it lands a Giga Drain, finishing off Kale. We bring in Milton next. Brute Bonnet uses the priority Sucker Punch, taking out about a fifth of Milton's HP before it can use U-turn, getting the KO on Brute Bonnet, and we have to swap out. We swap to Van Dam, and she brings in her Flutter Mane. It outspeeds us and hits us hard with the Shadow Ball, leaving us with just over half of our HP before we can land an Iron Head for the one-hit KO. Sandy Shocks is in next, and it hits us hard with an Earth Power before we can land a Headlong Rush, which just barely misses the KO. So, one more Earth Power, and Van Dam goes down. We bring Milton in one more time, and a U-turn takes out Sandy Shocks, and we can bring in Basilgoose. And in comes Seta's final Pokemon, a Roaring Moon holding a booster energy to boost its attack stat. Unfortunately for Roaring Moon, we gave Basilgoose the Normal Gem, an item that boosts the power of the first normal type move it uses. And Explosion just happens to be a normal type move. So we used the Normal Gem boosted Explosion, taking out Roaring Moon, and oh, it lived. We bring in Milton, use U-turn, and take it down, winning us the fight and the run. Great job, Milton. And with that, we have now gone through all 18 types in this game. But when I Nuzlocke this game again, there is a good chance I'll be using different type combinations or restrictions. So yeah, look forward to that. We've got another couple videos in the works right now. Anyways, I've been Hextasy. Thanks for watching.